Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and as of the launch of Season 2 endgame content for the War Within expansion, we saw a pretty big revamp to how you're going to be gearing for this brand new season. Some players are going to go into raids, while others will dive straight into Mythic Plus dungeons, but it looks like delve gearing has also gotten much better this time around, and more players are going to be diving into delves, especially to clear the highest of difficulty tier 11 delves than ever before in Season 1. Where previously higher tier and higher difficulty delves weren't necessary to get some of the best gear from this content, but now there's a lot more of a reason as to why you'd want to do it, to get all of those gilded crests in order to upgrade some of the best gear available and craft even more items for the season. But they've also buffed up gear in delves in general, giving people even more hero track items early on, plus also a variety of different bonuses that you can get from delves with additional currencies and so forth. And while they did increase the reasons as to why you'd want to dive into delves, especially some of the more difficult content, they are still difficult at the very least. Tier 11s have proven themselves to be quite a bit of a challenge for many players out there. So I wanted to put together a quick video going over some of the ways that you can make tier 11 delves much easier to get them done as a weekly basis, whether you're looking to play tank, healer, or DPS within Season 2. I wanted to go over all of the ways that you can customize brand and what roles you should synergize with different roles, some of the best cures that you should run, and all the things you can do within delves in order to make your runs just a little bit easier. As always, if you guys want to see more guides like these for the patch 11.1 in the War Within expansion, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. So first of all, there's a couple of different tips in order to make your delve time easier, as while you're spending time within delves, you're trying to make every single run easier and easier, but also you want to make some of your future runs easier. One of those ways will be to get as much gear as possible, to level up brand as best as you can. All of those things do end up being pretty important. We'll talk about the brand setups for different roles in just a little bit, but first things first, you got to start changing this in every single one of your delves and actually look out for all of the different curiosity treasures. Last season, curiosity treasures were pretty decent to get brand just a smidge extra XP, but that's really about it. But they've gotten buffed up recently and now award a variety of different things from them. There still are a little RNG, like some of the times I'm opening curiosities and I just get a little bit of those resonant crystals, but other times you get significantly more XP for brand than ever before, which is great for leveling brand, and it also rewards players for exploring the delve a little bit more thoroughly. Also, it could drop a variety of delve reagents, which can be either used in professions in order to create items to make gold in the auction house, or list them directly to make even more gold for all those enchants and consumables and crafting materials they're going to need for the season. But apparently they could also drop the Wave Scrambler 2000. Now, within delves, you are guaranteed a bounty map eventually. After you do enough delves within a week, with bad luck protection, you're at least guaranteed one hero track item from one of those bountiful maps that can drop from delves. However, if you're just unlucky with these maps, you could also use the Scrambler, which is technically an item that can be purchased directly from Sir Finley Murgaton. The Wave Scrambler is an item that immediately summons up the Nemesis into your delve once you unlock the Restoration Stone. So once you make it halfway through the delve, you can then use it to directly summon the Nemesis in the delve. And when you defeat him, and he's actually really not that difficult to fight, at least in the early on, it's a guaranteed map as well, plus also a couple of gilded crests. So it's another guaranteed way for you to be able to skip out the weekly grind for delves if you're just looking for that hero track item. Maybe you outgrow all the champion track gear from delves and you're just looking to get more hero track pieces. You can get these from curiosities within delves. So definitely worth looting them. It's a pretty low chance. I've been trying to loot as many as I could, and it's a pretty low chance, but it can drop the Wave Scrambler. And when you get this item, it can make it a little bit easier for you to be able to start collecting more gear from delves to make your experience within delves a little bit easier, so you can push up to plus 11s a little bit quicker. Plus, the additional XP you'll get for brand will noticeably make brand more effective, whether you have them in a tank role, healing role, or DPS role. Now, another way to make delves a little bit easier is to set up Brand correctly and to play the right role to have an easier time with the delves. By this point, you probably all heard that how insane tank Brand is, and so you should probably run delves as a healer if you can to have the easiest time with this content. And even after the recent nerfs for tank Brand, which I got to just out Brand before the nerfs and after the nerfs, tank Brand as a healer is still one of the easiest ways to complete delves. You might have to be a little bit more careful when it comes to some of the pulls when you have Brand as a tank, as a healer role, but for the most part, he's still insane. Yeah, you can still have one of the easiest times clearing tier 11 delves with not a lot of gear. You might have to rotate your cooldowns a little bit more heavily because the Brand is going to take a little more damage now, and you're going to notice it. It's going to be significantly more damage. But it's not enough where Brand is useless as a tank. He's still highly effective. You're just going to have to focus on healing him a little bit more than usual. So in my opinion, healers still have the easiest time completing tier 11 delves. If you know how to heal, then I think you'll have the easiest time getting through delves as a solo player, as a healer role. With Brand, even after the tank nerfs, he's still highly effective. He also has just fantastic opportunity to maintain aggro on him, so you're going to be pretty safe. Brand also empowers all of your healing effectiveness. The more you heal him, the more damage he can do as well. He has a DPS mode and a tanky mode, and even after the nerf, the boomstick DPS mode, while he's trying to hold aggro, it still is very, very effective. He did quite a bit of damage within a delve run, and with the right setup with Curios, he can definitely be still not as tanky as he was initially, but pretty close to what it was. But as you get better gear, it's also going to be much easier to heal Brand. But if you even dive into some of the tier 15s right now with barely, or tier 11 delves right now without any gear, you're still probably going to have the easiest time compared to any other role out there. Now, if you can play a tank, however, you should also do delves as a tank. Veg Demon Hunters, Prot Warriors, Paladins, you name it, all those classes have access to a tanking role. And if you can tank within delves, you should, especially if you know how to tank optimally. Brand as a tank combo is still very, very solid. You could either run him as a healer role in order to give you more healing, but you could also run him as a DPS because there's actually some advantages with one or the other. As a healer, Brand can dispel you and keep you alive, so certain DPS or certain tank specs like anybody that isn't a Blood DK, Veg Demon Hunter, or Guardian Druid, like if you need more self-survivability, Brand as a healer is going to keep you alive the entire time. So you can go for a more offensive playstyle just so you can take care of trash packs rather quickly. But if you are Blood DK, Veg Demon Hunter, or a Guardian Druid and you have a self-healing build, then you could run Brand as a damage dealer. He swaps out a couple of his utility from a Dispel to an Interrupt. He's a lot more aggressive at killing mobs. And in most cases, if mobs die quicker, they don't do as much damage to you because they're not as live for as long. So the encounters are quite short, and Brand is pretty aggressive when he's in DPS mode, paired together with really good Curios, and he can unleash considerable amount of damage overall and provide a still additional utility and to some degree even things like survivability with some of these different carriers that are available. However, as a DPS player, I think you're kind of stuck with Brand as a healer. There was some synergy if you were like a hybrid DPS like a Windwalker Monk or a Retribution Paladin where you can use off healing on a tank Brand. But it looks like they nerfed a lot of that synergy, so you can't really be a DPS player with a tank Brand. It's a lot easier with him as a healer. But if, as a DPS class, you're going to have the hardest time, I think, in delves going to tier 11. Brand has a lot of healing. He's still going to be really strong. He has great emergency healing. Dispels are going to be good. And as long as you stagger, pick up all of his healing pots, like pick up one, let the healing over time tick for a bit, then pick up a second to get that healing over time to 2 stacks, so it's a lot more effective. Let it tick out for a while, then pick up a third before the potion expires so you can refresh it. You will have to do this little like stagger dance with potions in order to maximize his healing value, and you'll have to use defenses pretty regularly in a lot of these different trash packs. But yeah, it still is possible, but it is a little bit harder as a pure DPS class. Now, if you can tank or if you can heal on your class, you should within delves. It's actually going to make the experience that much easier. But if you're stuck with a pure DPS class like a Warlock, a Rogue, a Mage, or a Hunter, there are some specs that can make delves just a little bit easier. Now, when you play Mage, it doesn't really matter which spec you play because all of them have access to images and shields, which are all really helpful. But if you did want to play the most optimal one to have the easiest time surviving delves, I'd probably say Frost Mage has always been really good at that, because you have all these frosty spells that have natural slowing and rooting properties, so you can kite enemies and keep them at a distance. Not all enemies are going to get slowed. Certain elites do ignore slows from your frosty spells, but I would say Frost Mage would be one of the easier ones to pull, especially if you're going to be fighting multiple enemies at once. Drop out a Blizzard and a Frozen Orb will allow you to keep them at bay while you keep slinging spells at them, pelting them from a distance, which makes runs just a little bit easier. If you play a rogue, I think Outlaw is a little bit better for delve runs, just because you have access to big cooldown reduction, primarily for defensive abilities such as evasion. You can have it up a lot more often, so a lot of the physical damage that you take into the face, you could essentially avoid. While the other specs also have evasion, they don't have the cooldown reduction that Outlaw has, so I would say Outlaw is just slightly better ahead of everybody else, just slightly. But if you prefer playing Assassination and Subtlety, your experience won't be that much more different, because you can always substitute the uptime of evasion with more stuns and more kidney shots and cheap shots and just kiting enemies around. Like Assassination, you can technically go for crippling poison, put up bleeds on the enemy, and as long as you can keep them in bait, letting it bleed out over time, that could also be a viable strategy as well. As a Warlock, for the most part, it doesn't really matter which spec you play, because all of them have access to a tanky pet of the Voidwalker, which can be helpful within delves. If you are going to be using the Voidwalker, Affliction and Destruction are slightly better with a Voidwalker, because Demonology optimally would like to use a Felguard. Felguard sometimes can be tanky, but I've noticed that in the past he hasn't been as tanky as pure Voidwalker, just in the raw damage that he can take, so you may need to do a bit more pet management in that regard. But yeah, Destro and Affliction would be a little bit better with a pure Voidwalker pet. Speaking of a pet class, Hunter is one of the best ones out there, and Beastmaster would be one of the easiest specs to play into. This way you could have the most empowered pet out there, and you actually have access to some of the tankier pets in the game, some of the unique beasts that only Beastmastery can tame. If you could pick up maybe something like a Bloodhoof from Warlord's Adrenal, those pets generally take more healing, so as you have a Spirit Mend on the pet, or a Pet Heal, or Exhilaration on them, they'll get even more healing from every one of your healing-based abilities to keep the pet alive longer, so that pet is going to give you an easier time within these delves to make sure that you can survive them and complete them a little bit easier. Now, no matter which role you have Bran in, you do want to outfit them with some of the best curios available. So, certain curios right now, I mean, technically all of them are useful in their own way, but I noticed that some are a little bit better than others. Now, one of the ones that players enjoyed the most right now, from what a lot I heard, is Mechasaurs. And while not consistent, when you do have a good Mechasaur in the right position, and especially if you have them in the higher ranks, Mechasaurs can apparently do a ton of damage, so that one can be very helpful. Plus, can also rip some of the aggro away from you if you don't want to constantly take pressure, or if you don't want Bran as a tank to constantly take pressure. Besides this, Pinged Augment Chip seems to be a really good one to use with Bran as a tank or Bran as a DPS, as it just increases their overall effectiveness. Technically, it also does increase the healing for Bran, but it's not really necessary, especially when he is a healer, because you also have to watch out for Bran. As a healer, you will also find that a little bot was going to spawn from time to time while in combat, and will try to run to Bran, try to stun him really quickly. If you can dispel him as a healer, so dealing with them is really easy. As a tank, you'll just want to make sure to stun the bot and eliminate it before it reaches Bran. As a DPS, having to manage Bran while also managing your health bar is not optimal, so I don't enjoy Pinged Augment Chip here specifically. Besides this, Bouncing Grenade seems to be also a decent one as well. A lot of players, if you're looking for Bran to have a little bit better overall damage, usually end up running the Bouncing Grenades, because it ends up unleashing quite a bit of decent damage for Bran specifically. Now, in the utility curio, there's technically a lot of really good ones, but if you're just looking for best survivability to deal within delves, Pacifist Rig is really good, especially when it comes to living. As a DPS, I love using this one because it gives you a little bit extra protection, resets your health bar really quickly, gives you just a little bit extra defense with a brand new mech that just gives you a nice reset. It just makes doing delves a little bit easier. It also pumps out quite a decent bit of damage for just being able to AFK and funnel fire and missiles to literally everything in front of you. So it overall ends up being really good even at lower ranks. The three-dimensional blueprinter could also be really good because it'll just make copies of creatures that you defeat within delves, and that could be extra enemies or extra allies for you to run with Bran. This can be used with Bran on any Mo, tank, DPS, or healer, as all of these creatures are generally more helpful and add to additional delve damage. Otherwise, Loot Raider could also be really good. Not only does it help you find some of the smaller Mystic Curio treasures within delves, but it also puts a debuff on enemies, make it take more damage depending on the rank of the Loot Raider utility curio that you have, up to 10% more damage on enemies below 95% health for 15 seconds. So it can just be additional extra damage for you to take out enemies and bosses before they really get out of control. And then we also have some generalized last minute tips for delves. Delves don't have a timer like Mythic Plus Dungeons, so you're actually free to go slow within delves because you're just trying to complete a tier 11 delve. You don't need to necessarily do it super quickly unless you just press on time, but there's no in-game mechanic where you are forced to have to complete delves as quickly as humanly possible. So go slow, pull small, just pull whatever mobs you think you can handle or you think your brand can handle. All you need to do is be able to finish the delve with lives remaining, and trying to do a sprint could just put you in a more dangerous situation than it has to be. Also, consumables. If you treat higher tier difficulty delves like it would a real difficult raid fight or a Mythic Plus dungeon fight, you'll probably run that content with consumables like a flask at the very bare minimum, maybe healing potion if you need more survivability, maybe drums if you don't have access to a lust natively on your character. Little things like that can be very helpful within delves, so do utilize them and outfit your character appropriately, utilizing the auction house for all of these items. Then, delves themselves also have quite a number of consumables that you can get. Most of these things players will just throw away at the nearest possible vendor, but all these items can actually be very, very helpful, from variety of new foods and consumables to items that increase your movement speed or can even stun enemies. So use those delve consumables because delves in a way kind of count like open world content, and it's one of those items that can be used within open world content. So you can actually make delves and running delves just a little bit easier. So you should be using these things if you do get them in your bags. Don't necessarily need to sell them immediately, so try to hold on to them and utilize them to make some of your delve runs a little bit easier. Also, as you're going through a delve, you don't necessarily have to clear out the entire delve in a lot of the cases in order to finish it. So there are some fights, if you can avoid them, you should avoid them, because one of the things you're going to have to manage within delves, especially as you're doing some of the more difficult tiers of delves and you want to do them with lives remaining, you'll have to manage your cooldowns, primarily defenses and offensives, in order to be able to get through some of the encounters as safely as possible. And when there are some fights that you don't necessarily have to do and you could avoid, you should. Though, just make sure if you are trying to avoid certain encounters, make sure those enemies don't accidentally pass back into you, because if it is one of those roaming packs that maybe travels up and down a certain path that may run into you by accident, in some cases it's actually better to do them, but just do all the encounters that you have to in order to be able to finish the delve. But it doesn't mean you have to clear the entire delve of every single enemy encounter in order to be able to complete it, especially if you just focus on trying to get some of the end of delves rewards at the end of a run. So try to pick your battles as best as you can, especially if you have access to stealth on certain classes like rogues, hunters, druids, for instance, mages with invisibility. There are some encounters that you could just outright skip, and that can make some of your delve runs just a little bit safer, a little bit quicker, and may just offer you a slightly better experience within delves overall. As always though, I want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys did enjoy this quick little update. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give it a like. I would very much appreciate it. Shout out this community, probably the best place to reach out and go over all of the newest updates as soon as they hit 11.1 realms, and we'll likely be seeing even more class tuning and updates as we head into the season through patch notes. Also, let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.